My fiancé's family tried to take my entire paycheck. I'm a 30-year-old guy who was planning to marry Bianca, my girlfriend of 3 years. The ceremony was set for half a year from now. Everything seemed to be falling into place. We'd already sent out the announcements and made our payments to secure the venue. My career in supply chain management pays well. I'm not wealthy, but I live comfortably. Bianca coordinates events for a charitable organization. She's passionate about her work, though the compensation is modest. Her folks, Walter and Diana, have always been overbearing. They reside in an enormous residence that feels more like a showroom than a home. Walter operates an upscale landscaping company that I always suspected was struggling financially. Diana describes herself as a community organizer, which mainly involves hosting elaborate gatherings and judging people's gardens. From the beginning, they scrutinized me like I was merchandise they weren't sure about purchasing. Yesterday evening, they requested my presence for a meal. They claimed we needed to finalize some arrangements for the ceremony. When I arrived, something felt wrong immediately. The atmosphere was tense and calculated. We consumed an overcooked poultry dish, and afterward, while I was sipping wine, Walter began speaking. He expressed his pleasure about me becoming part of their family. Then he mentioned something about combining our financial resources for better management. Diana added with her characteristic artificial smile that this was all about providing security for Bianca. Walter pushed a thick, leather-covered document toward me across their expensive table. It landed with a heavy thud. The title read, Family Financial Covenant. My heart sank as I began reading. This wasn't a standard prenuptial agreement. It was a 6-page document filled with legal terminology that essentially demanded the following. Every cent I earned after taxes, starting from our wedding day, would be automatically transferred to a newly created joint account. Walter would have complete control over this account as the designated financial administrator. I would receive a monthly allowance of $1,000 for personal needs, fuel, meals, clothing, and other necessities. Meanwhile, Bianca's annual income of $32,000 would remain entirely under her control for whatever she wanted. All significant financial choices, including my vehicle payments and educational debt, would be Walter's responsibility to manage. The room seemed to spin around me. This arrangement was essentially financial imprisonment. I started laughing because the situation seemed too ridiculous to be real. I asked if this was some kind of prank. Walter's expression turned stern. He insisted they never joke about money. I looked at Bianca in disbelief, asking if she knew about this document. She barely nodded, avoiding eye contact while examining her silverware intently. Diana chimed in with fake concern, telling me not to be difficult and claiming Walter was excellent with investments. I reminded them that my income wasn't part of their investment portfolio. When I finally got Bianca to look at me, her eyes showed irritation rather than apology. She acted like I was overreacting, calling it a simple organizational procedure. She reminded me of everything her parents had contributed to our wedding plans. I pointed out that I was covering 80% of the ceremony costs. When I asked if she truly supported this insane proposal, she became defensive, insisting it was best for the family and that I should be the provider. Then she said something that changed everything. Just sign it. Alex, please, for me, just sign it. Silence filled the room. I observed Walter looking triumphant, Diana treating me like a disobedient child, and Bianca, my future wife, who had just attempted to sell my financial freedom for her family's benefit. I smiled broadly and agreed that perhaps I was making too much of the situation. They all visibly relaxed. I announced I needed to retrieve a pen, and Walter seemed pleased. I mentioned that I must have left my good pen in my vehicle and would return shortly. I walked through their marble hallway, grabbed my belongings, and headed toward the exit. Bianca called after me, confused about where I was going. I repeated that I was getting a pen. Then I walked out, got in my car, and started the engine. Bianca rushed outside barefoot, completely bewildered. I told her through the window that she had embarrassed herself along with her parents. As she began panicking, I searched online for information about prenuptial agreements and sent her a link to a basic legal resource. She screamed at me not to leave, beginning to cry as reality set in. She pleaded that we could discuss adjusting the allowance amount. I put my car in reverse and told her their agreement had a fundamental flaw. As I drove away, hearing her desperate cries, I felt simultaneously heartbroken and vindicated. My hands trembled during the drive home, not from fear, but from anger and a strange sense of clarity. She wasn't my partner. She was their financial scout. Fortunately, we never consolidated our living arrangements. I had always maintained my own apartment. I immediately took action. First, I contacted my credit card provider. Bianca had authorization to use my primary card for wedding-related purchases. I revoked that access instantly. Second, I called our venue. I deposited $10,000 that I knew was non-refundable. I canceled our reservation, citing irreconcilable personal issues. The loss hurt, but it was far cheaper than my entire future. Third, I canceled with our catering service, losing another $5,000. Fourth, I addressed our vacation fund. We'd established a joint savings account specifically for our honeymoon. I'd been contributing $1,500 monthly for 10 months, totaling $15,000. Checking the records, I discovered Bianca had contributed only $500 total. I transferred my $15,000 to a private account, then sent her exactly $500 through a payment app with the note, "Honeymoon Fund Contribution," before closing the joint account. Finally, I considered the engagement ring on my dresser, a $20,000 purchase I'd made using a credit card with 0% financing. It was a conditional gift, and that condition had just exploded. This would be the difficult part. 1 week later. My life became chaotic, but I was the one in control. The initial 72 hours were intense. My phone received countless notifications that I ignored, letting everything go to voicemail. The messages were a symphony of entitlement. Bianca left 14 voicemails. Initially, she claimed I was overreacting and scared her. She offered to negotiate, suggesting they could increase my allowance to $1,500. Then she became angry after discovering I'd canceled the card, demanding I reactivate it because her mother was having a panic attack. Later, she called about the canceled venue, accusing me of canceling without discussion and calling it our money. It was my money. Diana left messages calling me Alexander and claiming I'd caused tremendous distress. She said Walter was disappointed and demanded I apologize immediately. Another message accused me of insanity for losing the deposits, insisting I owed them money and threatening that I'd ruined her daughter's wedding. Walter's voicemails called my decision rash and emotional, claiming I'd misunderstood a simple financial proposal, a sign of immaturity. He offered to renegotiate my allowance amount and warned me not to foolishly throw away a woman like Bianca. They fixated on the deposits I'd lost without grasping that I was protecting all my future earnings. Their delusion was astounding. Now for what I call consequence management. I had one remaining unpleasant task: the ring. I wasn't accepting a $20,000 loss. Since the condition for the gift, marriage, was terminated by their attempted extortion, I sent Bianca a straightforward message stating the engagement was over and I'd meet her at her workplace Friday at 5 o'clock to collect the ring. If she didn't return it, I'd file a police report for theft and pursue civil action for its full value. She sent numerous messages begging me to call. I ignored them all. Friday at the designated time, I waited outside her nonprofit office. She emerged looking devastated with swollen eyes. She whispered my name, asking if I'd even speak with her. I simply requested the ring, my voice harsh. She pleaded with me not to do this, claiming she still loved me. I repeated my demand. She started crying, admitting she didn't have it. My stomach dropped. She explained she'd given it to her mother for safekeeping after I left. I told her to call Diana and have her bring it. Between sobs, she revealed that her mother refused, claiming the ring was a non-refundable deposit for Bianca's pain and suffering. I actually laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. I called it absurd, pointing out she was complicit in her parents' scheme to steal my income. She shrieked that it wasn't stealing, it was family, right there on the sidewalk. She accused me of ruining her life, mentioning that friends had already purchased dresses and that she couldn't believe I'd actually canceled the venue. She even threatened to sue me for wedding costs. I asked what she'd sue me for, the $15,000 in deposits I'd personally paid. I gave her one final opportunity to return the ring, or I'd call the police immediately. She completely broke down, admitting she couldn't. When I demanded to know why, she revealed something shocking. Her mother had sold it. I stood frozen as she explained through tears that they needed money for the caterer's cancellation invoice, which was $5,000. Diana had used the ring, calling it my contribution to the cancellation. They'd sold a $20,000 ring supposedly to cover a $5,000 bill. But that wasn't what actually happened. They sold it because they were financially desperate and dishonest. The cancellation fee was merely a convenient justification. I stared at the woman I'd planned to marry, now a common thief. I pulled out my phone and told her I was filing both a police report and a civil lawsuit against her and both parents for the ring's full value, noting she'd just admitted to converting my property. She grabbed my arm, promising she'd get the money back. I shook her off and told her to save her explanations for the judge. As I walked away, she screamed that she loved me and that I was destroying her life. I'd now lost $15,000 in deposits plus a $20,000 ring. This was no longer about a broken heart. It was about recovery. My attorney was eager to proceed. 4 months later, welcome to the conclusion of my financial and romantic catastrophe. The legal proceedings were thoroughly unpleasant. As promised, I filed a civil claim for the ring's $20,000 value, naming Bianca, Walter, and Diana as co-defendants. Filing the police report proved challenging. The first officer dismissed it as a civil matter. I returned with my lawyer, who explained that my former fiancée had admitted taking a conditional gift and giving it to her mother, who then sold it without permission to pay a bill. That constitutes textbook theft by conversion. They finally documented the report, which became critical evidence. The opposition's response escalated dramatically. Walter, Diana, and Bianca hired an attorney who appeared to specialize in personal injury cases. Their defense claimed the ring was an irrevocable gift and that I'd verbally agreed to their financial arrangement before backing out in bad faith. Most incredibly, they filed a countersuit. They demanded $50,000 for the entire wedding cost, which I'd mostly funded, plus $100,000 for Bianca's emotional distress and public humiliation. They were suing me for $150,000 because I refused to become their financial subordinate. I was stressed and paying legal fees. This wasn't the clean exit I'd hoped for. However, as someone who manages logistics professionally, I'm meticulous about documentation. I had more than just my recollections. I had evidence. I possessed the original receipt for the $20,000 ring in my name, paid from my account. I had bank statements confirming all $15,000 in deposits came from my account. I had the payment app transaction showing the $500 honeymoon contribution. And my attorney's favorite element, the voicemails, all saved, backed up, and transcribed. We attended a court-ordered mediation. The mediator, Mrs. Gable, appeared stern and no-nonsense. Walter and his lawyer postured aggressively, claiming I was unstable, that I'd fled a family dinner and broken a verbal agreement. Diana performed the role of devastated mother, claiming I'd broken her daughter's heart, caused insomnia and weight loss, and humiliated the family. Bianca sat quietly, glaring at me with hollow eyes, insisting I owed them and had ruined everything. My attorney, Helen, simply smiled. She noted that my version of events differed somewhat. When they claimed I'd verbally agreed to the contract, with Walter insisting I'd said it wasn't a big deal, supposedly a clear verbal contract. Helen found that interesting. She then produced her tablet, questioning why Bianca had texted me after I supposedly agreed, saying, "Just sign it." "Stop making this a thing." She played the text-to-speech audio. Bianca shrank in her chair. Helen then played Walter's voicemail where he'd said, "Call me back. We can renegotiate your stipend." Walter's face transformed from smug to pale. Helen pointed out the contradiction. If I'd agreed, why did they still need to negotiate after I left? Regarding the countersuit, she noted they were suing for $150,000 in costs and distress. Yet my client had receipts proving he'd paid the $15,000 in non-refundable deposits they claimed as their loss. They were essentially suing me for money I'd paid because I refused their extortion and because they stole my property. The mediator asked Diana directly if she'd sold the ring. Diana went on the offensive, claiming it was her right, that I'd humiliated her daughter, and calling it a non-refundable deposit for pain. Helen thanked her for that admission and presented the police report listing that action as theft by conversion. Helen then stated we'd drop the civil suit if they were willing to face felony criminal charges for selling $20,000 in stolen property. Checkmate. Their attorney began whispering frantically. Walter was visibly sweating. Their $150,000 countersuit vanished immediately. The mediator informed them bluntly, pay for the ring, or she'd end mediation and they could explain to a criminal judge why they sold property they admitted wasn't theirs. They agreed to pay the $20,000. Here's the satisfying part. They didn't have the money. The landscaping business was indeed a house of cards. They were heavily mortgaged on that large, empty house. Last week, my attorney received a cashier's check for $20,000. I learned from a mutual acquaintance that Walter and Diana had to take out a high-interest second mortgage on their precious home to pay me. The family management account they designed to save their failing business cost them their home equity. Final accounting. I lost $15,000 in deposits. I paid my attorney $8,000. Quality representation isn't cheap. Total losses, $23,000. I recovered $20,000. Ultimately, this victory cost me $3,000 and 4 months of my life. This is the reality. Revenge isn't profitable. It's justice. I'm still slightly in the red financially, but I'm free. I encountered them in the parking area after mediation concluded. Bianca rushed toward me, her face splotchy and contorted. She spat at me, asking if I was satisfied now, claiming I'd ruined them and they'd lose their house all because of me. I looked at the woman I'd once loved. I told her I wasn't happy, but I wasn't her cash machine. I didn't cause this, she did. She saw that document, she saw what future it represented, and she told me to just sign it. She made her choice. She stared at me as the words finally registered. I got in my vehicle and drove away. I'm single now. I'm out $3,000. I must start over emotionally. But I have my salary, all of it, for the rest of my life. And that's a pretty good deal.